I went to Iraq and multiple rotations over there. You start to assimilate with the Iraqis you're either working with or you're training with, and then it kind of starts to fall apart where it's like, oh, this is somewhat normal for them. Now, they don't talk about it, and I'm not saying it's like everyone, but the Afghanis, we had to have, depending on where we were in their barracks living situation, like you had to put really hard restrictions, like, no butt fucking guys for the majority of this. This is a health issue. We weren't like, it's not like we were putting Bibles on their beds or something. Right. We're just saying, hey, this is really unhealthy. You guys are going to spread a bunch of different diseases to one another. And like, we've got a mission to accomplish here. And every SF guy, every guy that's like been in Afghanistan knows what Man Love Thursday is. And it's kind of a thing that they do. As you build rapport, build confidence in your friendships, and people start to talk about, but it's one of those things that you just kind of accept that that's happening from a good portion of the guys. The more disturbing factor is it's socially indoctrinated in the children, like the sexual exploitation of children. So it starts early and then it moves into the adulthood. Bachabazi is a real thing, and it's dressing boys to look like girls, and they have some Afghanis. When I say some, I don't know how pervasive it is, but it's a big percentage. But it's the sexual exploitation of children that when you find that out, that's when things really turn for you psychologically. You're like, this place is really fucked. Children are sexually exploited regularly, and it's mainly the boys, from what I understand. And when I first got to Afghanistan, I used to see these truck drivers, and I thought, my dad was a truck driver. It's really cool these truck drivers take their sons out with them on the road. That's such a really cool cultural thing. And my interpreter turned to me, he's like, those aren't their kids, dude. That's how fucking horrible it is.
It's so horrible that they're on display.
Kandahar and different areas, they'll have parades, and they're on displays to, this is my harem, and they're proud of it. That was one of the most disturbing things that we would talk about, specifically between like the departments, between Department of State, CIA, and the military. Is like, when you're out with the guys from a tactical and combat role, you see them and you interact with the way they are from a tactical level every day. And you'd bring this up to management, and they would say, oh, what do you mean? That doesn't happen. That doesn't happen. Or they pretend it doesn't happen. But if you were on the ground in Afghanistan during the times I was there, honestly, from 2001, we'll say, to the time that we pulled out, everybody uniformly would agree with what I'm saying. If you spent some time in Afghanistan, you knew that it was happening. But it turns for you emotionally and psychologically, because you're like, okay, now I've got some hate. It makes your job a little bit easier.
Right. Inside the lives of girls dressed as boys in Afghanistan. Encourages parents to dress their daughters as sons for a better future, but often it only makes life harder.
Yeah.
Why do they do that? What's that about? Girls dressing as boys.
Well, one, there's a very low education rate when I come back to Afghanis.
So they can get the kids educated if they pretend they're boys?
Women are really seen as, in Afghanistan, I'm generalizing, right? I'm taking really big swaths of the Afghan culture. So I know this isn't every Afghan. I've got lots of different Afghan friends, and I've hired a lot of Afghans. This isn't everybody.
This is the dancing boys of Afghanistan. Go back up again, show what's going on. These guys are throwing money at this dancing boy. What the fuck, man? So those are like little boys, and they were dancing like strippers, and these guys are throwing dollars at them.
Yes.
Oh my God, this is so crazy.
And they're younger, so they go much younger. These are very wrong things from a American support, tactical and strategic intervention. Like, we should not encourage this whatsoever. I mean, this goes back to Iraq, and honestly, trust in policymakers and the State Department and their entire position, either politically, philosophically. It's just fundamentally flawed.
One of the things about child molesting is that if these kids are growing up in this culture where they're going to be an adult and they're going to do that to kids as well, which has probably happened to all these guys, right? You're not going to fix that with all these people alive. The culture gets to a point where it's so fucked that it's like, how can you ever fix that? How many generations would it take before the scars of all those people being abused wears off and normalizes and people can be normal again?
And there's lots of different things that you can talk about, because the history of Afghanistan is, we'll say, post-'80s and Soviet intervention, and then, with the Taliban pushback or the Mujahideen, and like they've completely destroyed the education, the progress and evolution of Afghanistan. I mean, they had decades of war. Then you had basically a failed state with Taliban and extremist control. I mean, as the Taliban moved in, fundamentally, it's an evil organization. There's a soccer field in Kabul where the Taliban used to stone women to death because they weren't wearing their hijab, or rule of a woman would be raped and she would be accused of infidelity on her husband, and they would stone her, or they would beat her with a stick. They turned the soccer field into a place where they could have public displays for execution. It was completely insane. So they completely separated the women away from being able to evolve. They treated them as beasts of burden. You had to be an Islamic extremist to be acceptable. As we came in, it was almost like going back in time, almost 1,000. It felt like you were going back in time like 1,000 years.